Despite the fact the Quran and Hadiths do not require money to be paid out in fees for halal certification, it is a massive, worldwide, extremely lucrative industry. Halal as a concept only exists because of Sharia. To practice halal is to practice Sharia. A common question I'm often asked is, what about kosher? Well, what about kosher? I do not believe halal and kosher are the same thing or even in the same realm. While there are some similarities in the kill process, there are in fact far more differences. Kosher slaughter methods are far superior to halal slaughter methods and have measurable differences in the outcome. So, despite the fact they are both religious requirements and fees are paid for certification, there are some very significant differences. Kosher is primarily for a Jewish market and is usually very clearly identifiable on the label or is in a separate section altogether. There are also even kosher supermarkets, so consumers have a choice as to whether or not they wish to purchase products that have been subject to kosher practices or fees. Consumers have a choice. This is not the case with halal certification. Many companies are paying the fees but not displaying the fact on their labels. There's no ability to choose whether or not you want to support and fund halal practices. There is often not a separate section for halal, and so many products are halal certified that would already be considered halal or permissible without the certificate. The consumer is left with very little choice. Kosher is not about undermining the principles and values the majority of Australians uphold, and they are not trying to change or dominate Australia in any way. I've never heard a rabbi preach death to democracy or kill the infidel. However, there are many imams in Australia and around the world who have preached these very things. Synagogues in Australia are not preaching sermons of hate toward Westerners or unbelievers. They are not radicalising their youth with messages of violence and death. Terrorist plots are not being uncovered in synagogues. However, the money raised by halal certification is funding mosques and Islamic preachers, in some cases who do in fact promote messages of violence and death toward unbelievers. Think about it. The counter-terror programs that we have, the counter-terror experts that we have, all focus on the Islamic religion. This is a problem. We don't have counter-terrorism programs to try and de-radicalise Jewish youth, but we do have those programs and millions of dollars in funding trying to convince Muslims not to take the Quran or the example of the so-called prophet literally. Their teaching upholds Muhammad as the perfect human, and all must follow his example, which is downright disturbing. Terrorist plots have been uncovered in some mosques. Kosher is for a Jewish market, targeting Jewish consumers. Halal certification, however, targets all consumers in an effort to transfer wealth from non-Muslims to Muslims. Whether you agree or disagree with kosher or halal, it is time to completely rethink religious certification in Australia. If religious groups want guarantees that products are suitable for them, they should fund it themselves and not demand the rest of the general public pay for it. It needs to be the consumer's choice and responsibility whether or not they want to fund any religious practice attached to their everyday grocery purchases. That is why we're calling on the government to implement the bipartisan recommendations handed down by the Senate committee in 2015. It is time to clearly label products if they have been subject to any form of religious slaughter, so consumers can make informed decisions about the products they purchase. It is also time the government implements the recommendations to regulate the industry to stop the profiteering, corruption and monopolies that do exist.